Welcome back and thanks again for joining me. Let's get into this weekend's festivities. This Saturday, we have a huge fight in the lightweight division as former champions Vasiliy Lomachenko takes on George Kambosos Jr. for the vacant IBF Lightweight title. This is part of the four titles that became vacant once Devin Haney decided to move up to 140 pounds. So Loma and Kambosos will be doing battle for this. I think on the surface, this seems just like a run-of-the-mill Saturday night top-ranked main event featuring Loma. But I think as you dive deeper, you see that there's a lot more to this fight than we might first initially think. For both fighters, they are former champions. For Kambosos, for both of them, I would say this is kind of like their last shot, right? Now, I know Loma has this great background and amateur and it's great pedigree. He has a name in boxing, but the hard truth to swallow is that he's lost two fights to the two best fighters he's ever fought. That being Devin Haney and that being Teofimo Lopez. Now, both of those fights were super competitive, and he was in both fights. The Teo fight was more definitive. I think he lost that fight. It's kind of hard to argue him in winning more rounds than Teo. Devin Haney fights a little bit different. It can kind of go both ways. That was super competitive. But ultimately, he took an L in both fights. A lot of that has to do with not only the age difference, as both guys are not even yet in their prime, and Loma is already, at the time, 35 and 33, I believe, when he fought Teo. But also, he is naturally more of a 130, 122 pounder. And you see both of those guys are now fighting at 140. Haney's a guy notoriously known as a weight bully. He comes in really heavy for his fights as he cuts a lot of weight to make these lower divisions. And that played a huge factor in both of those fights that Loma had with Teo and Devin. He was clearly the smaller man. And where he was able to accumulate damage with his volume that he threw at the lighter divisions when he was fighting Jorge Linares and Jose Pedraza and Guillermo Rigondeaux. He's able to put a volume on these guys and beat them down over the course of a fight and essentially beat them up. At 135, those punches don't carry the same pop and they don't cause the same amount of damage. So he was never truly hurting Teo. He was never truly hurting Devin Haney, and they were able to do a lot more damage. Now, obviously, he didn't walk out that fight with any visible damage or anything like that, but he just wasn't able to slow them down like he was able to slow down other fighters when he was fighting at those smaller weight classes. So he's in a situation now where a loss to Kambosos kind of really hurts his resume and hurts not his legacy, because he's always going to be known as a great boxer, especially for what he did in the amateurs and again, fighting for a world title in his second fight. But it's not going to look good. You know, it's going to look really suspect when you say, hey, Loma was this great fighter, and you pull up his boxing record, and it's like lost to Haney, lost to Teo, and potentially lost to Kambosos. Now, on the other side of the ring is George Kambosos Jr., who is an unlikely former unified champion. He famously took out Teofimo Lopez in a fight that took forever to materialize and went through different promotions, and I think it took about like a year and a half to truly start, finish, and to truly start and then get to the ring. And that fight in the moment was a crowning achievement, obviously for Kambosos. He walked in a relative unknown and walked out a unified champion. But in hindsight, looking back at the fight, you can make the argument that Teo really lost that fight more so than Kambosos won it. Teo came into that fight super emotional. If you look back to the first few rounds, he's headhunting and throwing everything at Kambosos. He's super emotional. He was not reserved. He really didn't fight his game, and he paid for it. He got knocked down in the first round. He struggled to land clean to follow up with combinations on Kambosos, and ultimately lost a spirited split decision, but it was a loss nonetheless. And that's Kambosos' best win to date. Also, if I remember correctly, Teo was coming off of COVID, and obviously long COVID's a real thing. He mentioned not feeling well after the fight, and even mentioned that he had to go to the hospital. So I think that played a lot into Kambosos getting that win, taking nothing away from him. He still had to show up. He still had to get that victory, and he did. But I don't think that victory aged so well, knowing that Teo just had a really off night that night. Kambosos followed that up with two fights against Haney. and he really wasn't competitive in either one. Haney kind of walked right through him, much to everyone's expectations. I don't think anyone was surprised at the outcome of that fight. So now Kambosos finds himself at a point now where he is the former unified champion. He has that big win over Teo, but then he has two losses over Devin Haney, which were very decisive. He gets his fight against Maxie Hughes, and let's just be honest, for anyone who's seen that fight, he did not win that fight at all. But boxing's boxing, and somehow he walked away with a W, and finds himself now back on the cusp of a title shot against a certified future Hall of Famer. A loss to Lomachenko pretty much relegates Kambosos to a gatekeeper. He's still relatively young at 30, but I can't imagine there being a clamoring for him to fight anyone, or with the expectation that if he fights anyone in the future, he's going to be the A side in terms of the guy expected to win. I think a loss to Lomachenko kind of solidifies him as a competitive game, up to the challenge fighter. He's always up to the challenge. He's not a guy who fights down to his competition. There just is a level disparity between him and Devin Haney and even Teo. And I expect there'll be a difference between him and Lomachenko. Both these guys are promoted by Top Rank, so it's fairly easy for this fight to come together. And Bob Arum's been saying that I'm not saying he thinks Kambosos is going to lose, but he's been saying that if Loma wins, he's going to then potentially fight Shakur Stevenson in the fall, provided that Shakur wins his fight. Now, that's a big fight. That's a fight that I think fight fans would be interested in seeing, but I would pump the brakes on the expectations of that fight, simply because, and anyone please correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, I think Shakur's next fight is the last fight on his Top Rank deal, which means he's a free agent once that fight concludes. So I think Bob Arum coming out and saying that is more so dangling the potential of, hey, if you stay with Top Rank, here's this fight with Lomachenko that I can provide you with, more so than a definitive course of action if both of those fighters wins. I'm not sure Shakur really wants that fight, or if that fight is enough to keep him with Top Rank. He can definitely go to Matchroom and chase a Devin Haney fight, or potentially PBC with the ability to work with Javante Davis, or Golden Boy and Ryan Garcia. That seems to be where the money's at right now. So again, I'm not sure if dangling a title fight against Vasiliy Lomachenko is enough to keep Shakur Stevenson around with Top Rank, but let's hope so. One thing that's good to see with guys like Loma, Loma's not backing down from anyone. He's going to be the only person in this generation, and he's significantly older than these guys to have these names on his resume. Ryan Garcia does have Tank, and he does have Devin Haney, but both of those fights come with weird caveats. Tank made him fight at an odd catch weight and put in a rehydration clause. And then when he fought Devin Haney, he was overweight, title wasn't on the line, and there's all these PED allegations and speculations around that fight as well. So his resume doesn't look that full. Teo has proven that he is willing to fight anyone. He fought Josh Taylor, he fought Loma. Let's see if he gets a big fight sometime soon too. But Loma's definitely been willing to get in the ring and trade with any one of these guys, and hasn't came up with excuses and hasn't backed down, even when there's a massive size difference between him and his opponents. So let's see how this fight this weekend plays out between him and Kambosos. Kambosos' game, he's got a beard on him. He always comes ready to fight, but there's just a talent disparity that I just don't believe he can overcome in a fight against Lomachenko. If he's not going to backpedal, he's not going to play corners, he's really not going to play angles. He's kind of going to come to the center of the ring and trade at times with Loma or pick and pop, and that's just playing right into Loma's hands. And Loma, I expect, will wear him down. I don't see a knockout. Loma hasn't knocked anyone out since Nagatani, so I think Loma wins by a 12-round decision, and then Bob Arum hopefully can start working toward that potential fight with Shakur. But we'll see. We'll see how things goes this Saturday night.